From the heights of Preah Vihear mountain, one can still see the fractures of the past etched deeply into the present. Though the age of chariots and swords has long since faded, the disputes between Thailand and Cambodia, especially over the sacred ancient temple of Preah Vihear, continue to smolder like embers refusing to die out. But to understand why a single mountain could ignite a conflict between nations, we must turn back the wheel of time to an era when Cambodia was not merely a kingdom, but a battleground for dominance between two regional powers.
The article below has been compiled from many sources. If there are any mistakes, or if you know any interesting information, feel free to leave a comment so I can learn as well. Now, let's begin the article.
Imperial lines, France, Siam, and borders, drawn with Colonial ink, 19th century. The 19th century, a time when maps were drawn more by political will than by historical reality or the voices of native peoples. As Europe entered its fiery colonial era, Southeast Asia became a grand chessboard, where every stroke of ink on a map could alter the fate of an entire nation. At the center of this game was Siam, the only kingdom in the region not to fall under colonial rule, and precisely because of that, constantly walking the fine line between survival and conquest. While Burma was swallowed by the British from the west, and Vietnam and Cambodia fell into the arms of the French from the east, Siam under King Mongkut, Rama IV, and later Chulalongkorn, Rama V, was forced to choose between resistance and calculated concessions. The French, dreaming of a grand Indo-Chinese federation under the tricolor flag, sought not only to control land, but to reshape the region's borders according to European standards. Thus, from round-table negotiations in Paris, maps began to take form, not based on traditional boundaries or historical agreements between ancient kingdoms, but drawn coldly by French cartographers stationed in Saigon or Hanoi, who marked out new lines with a dispassionate hand. Cambodia, having just emerged from decades under Siamese domination, was now a part of French Indochina. The French colonial authorities entered into a series of negotiations with Siam to demarcate the borders, most notably through the 1904 and 1907 treaties. These treaties transferred several western Cambodian provinces, once under Siamese control, back to Cambodia. Regions such as Battambang, Siem Reap, and the area around the Preah Vihear temple began to appear in diplomatic documents, but often with vague and ambiguous wording, sowing the seeds of future disputes. France created an unprecedented system of topographic maps, but instead of using traditional boundaries based on mountains, rivers, or cultural settlement patterns, they prioritized borders that were administratively convenient for colonial control and defense. In several military maps published in the early 20th century, the Temple of Preah Vihear was marked clearly within Cambodian territory. However, Siam never officially accepted these maps, nor were they invited to the drafting table. When the colonial officials returned to Europe, leaving behind rigid, authoritative maps, Southeast Asians began to realize borders were no longer sacred lines tied to ancestral lands or divinities, but rather the outcome of political negotiations, often coerced and rarely just. And in the heart of the Preah Vihear Mountains, where the ancient Hindu temple lies silently along the cliff's edge, the maps left behind by the French continue to wait, quietly, for the day when the tides of history will rise once more. From maps to mortar shells, the road to modern conflict, history never stays silent. It breathes, through faded maps, through the fine print at the bottom of forgotten treaties, and sometimes, through the echo of artillery in the misty mountains. From the early 20th to the mid-21st century, the ancient and solemn Preah Vihear temple has stood as a silent witness to one of the most complex and sensitive border disputes between two nations, Thailand and Cambodia. When France withdrew from Indochina in 1954, it left behind not only a power vacuum, but a labyrinth of borders never clearly demarcated. The question of Preah Vihear became urgent. Cambodia, now an independent nation, demanded the return of the temple, based on a 1907 map drawn by the French. Thailand, in contrast, rejected the map's legitimacy, arguing that border demarcation should follow the watershed line of the Dangrek Mountains, by which the temple would fall on Thai soil. Tensions escalated, But instead of turning to arms, Cambodia chose diplomacy. In 1959, the government filed a case with the International Court of Justice, ICJ, in The Hague. It was a bold move by King Norodom Sihanouk, an act of peace, but also a shrewd diplomatic strategy. On June 15, 1962, the court ruled Preah Vihear belonged to Cambodia. Citing the principle of acquiescence, the court reasoned that Thailand's decades-long lack of objection to the French map constituted tacit acceptance. Though controversial, the ruling forced Thailand to withdraw troops and hand over the temple. But it didn't end the dispute. The ruling made no clear mention of the surrounding land, an area both countries continued to claim. Since then, the shadow of the temple has lingered like a quiet fracture in Thai-Cambodian relations. Peace became a fragile coat of paint, easily peeled away when nationalism was stirred. Between 2008 and 2011, armed conflict reignited. When Cambodia lobbied for Preah Vihear to be recognized as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, Thailand viewed it as a unilateral move that affected the disputed zone. Artillery was exchanged. Shells arced over sheer cliffs and crashed down on the ancient stone where centuries earlier, the chants to Shiva once echoed. Thousands of civilians fled, dozens of soldiers were wounded or killed. Once again, history was buried beneath the ashes of the present. No one truly won these clashes. Both sides claimed sovereignty, accused the other of aggression, and both portrayed themselves as the injured party. The true cost was the constant fear of those living along the border and the enduring wound that still aches in two peoples who share blood, language, and tradition. Preah Vihear Temple, perched among clouds and cliffs, is no longer just an ancient monument. It has become a symbol of the collision between history, sovereignty, and colonial memory left unresolved. Silent footsteps along the cliff. Preah Vihear 2025. Time moves on, but Preah Vihear has never truly rested. Amid the mist-covered Dangrek Mountains and ancient forest shadows, the old stone temple, where heaven meets earth and Cambodia meets Thailand, still watches quietly over human footsteps. Only now, those footsteps, though no longer echoed by cannon fire as in 2008, 2011, or 2013, still carry the breath of conflict, smoldering, lingering, like a tremor in the soil, waiting for the day it splits open. In Vihear, the land surrounding Preah Vihear is no longer a battlefield of flame. There are no cannons, no tanks, no soldiers' bodies strewn across red stone slopes. But peace is still elusive. Along the narrow dirt paths leading to the temple, armed patrol vehicles roll by in silence. Makeshift outposts, half military, half militia, rise from the brush. Cambodian soldiers in berets peer through binoculars. Thai troops keep their fingers on the trigger. Both sides remain quiet, like two swordsmen waiting for the other to blink. No bullet needs to be fired to start a war. Sometimes it only takes a careless remark from a politician in Bangkok, a hardline broadcast from Phnom Penh, or a new map where just a few millimeters of boundary shift is enough to spark the storm. And in 2025, those puzzle pieces are slowly falling into place. Since the 2010s, both Cambodia and Thailand have learned how to wear masks. Before the world, they shake hands, sign agreements, join ASEAN summits, invite investment, and send teams to the SEA Games. But behind the stage lights, a different truth persists. The border remains unresolved. Each side still uses completely different maps, and both continue to quietly fortify their positions. Sometimes with a newly carved footpath, sometimes by opening volunteer schools, planting flags, or erecting friendship monuments near the cliffs, where soldiers once fell. No one says it aloud, but everyone knows this land is not just a matter of geography. It is a question of history, of honor, of identity. It is the ghost of French colonialism, of the 1907 map, of the 1962 International Court ruling, and above all, it is a battle over memory. Who has the right to remember? Who has the right to forget? Who gets to write the story? In 2025, the war has not returned in the form of tanks and mortars, but it still lives in the hearts of those who dwell on both sides of the mountain, in political speeches, in every jeep that crosses an unrecognized line. And Preah Vihear, as in centuries past, still stands. It does not laugh, it does not cry, it waits. July 2025, the undercurrent beneath the stone temple. As the monsoon rains pour down over the Dangrek border region, the Preah Vihear temple seems to rise more starkly from the misty veil of the mountains. This sacred site, once the heart of Khmer civilization, has long been tangled in maps, borders, and colonial schemes. And now in July 2025, it once again becomes the center of controversy, this time not from a court ruling, but from the very soil and the people who walk upon it. On July 14th, a group of Cambodian workers, reportedly tasked with upgrading the southern access road to the temple, erected a temporary marker, declaring it part of the heritage preservation boundary. The Thai side accused them of crossing the line provisionally recognized by both countries under the 2000 agreement. Just a few dozen meters, yet in a place where every inch of land holds the weight of history and national pride, it was a step beyond the red line. Just 2 days later, in the early morning of July 16th, Thai border forces dismantled the marker and established a makeshift checkpoint nearby. Cambodia reacted strongly. Within 48 hours, soldiers and militias from both sides converged on the area, not firing a single shot, but standing face to face in high tension. Cambodian media called it a serious violation of sovereignty, while Thai outlets described Cambodia's actions as systematic provocation. On July 20th, a video circulated on social media showing two groups of soldiers standing just meters apart, fingers on their triggers, shouting carried off by the wind blowing through the ancient stones. Public sentiment in both countries erupted. Nationalist groups in Siam, Thailand, and Preah Vihear, Cambodia, organized protests against one another. Words like reclaim, defend ancestral land, and recover lost territory once again echoed, not in old newspapers, but across TikTok, Facebook, and modern platforms. By the end of July, thanks to mediation by an ASEAN intermediary group, both sides agreed to withdraw to their previous positions and maintain the status quo. But no one walked away fully satisfied. A new crack had formed, thin and nearly invisible, yet very real, right beneath the ancient temple's foundation. After the storm, diplomacy, media, and an unhealed fracture. Though no gunfire erupted, the silent standoff along the border in July 2025 left deep scars on Southeast Asia's diplomatic chessboard. In the immediate aftermath, Cambodia's Ministry of Foreign Affairs summoned the Thai ambassador in Phnom Penh to deliver a formal protest note, demanding that Thailand cease all unilateral actions aimed at altering the status quo of the border area. In response, Bangkok insisted that its forces were merely maintaining security and overseeing a legitimate route within Sisaket province's recognized territory. The diplomatic war of words quickly escalated. Commentators in Phnom Penh likened the July incident to a wake-up call regarding Thailand's long-standing ambitions toward the ancient temple zone. Some Cambodian parliamentarians even called for a reassessment of the military posture surrounding the temple, raising fresh fears of escalation. On the Thai side, political talk shows, especially in the northeastern provinces, amplified the phrase sovereignty under threat, urging the government to adopt a firmer stance in response to what they described as soft incursions by Cambodia. The tension, though momentarily restrained, had already spilled from the forested border into diplomatic corridors and living rooms alike, leaving behind a fault line that neither press release nor handshake could fully mend. Border people, living in the gray zone. On both sides of the border, it is the local people, those born and raised at the foot of the ancient temple, who feel the fractures most keenly, despite their seeming invisibility. A small shop owner in Bon Phomsarol village, on the Thai side, shared on television. We used to trade with each other along that little path every day. Now soldiers are everywhere. Just one argument, and the whole area gets shut down. It's harder to live than during COVID. Meanwhile, in Sri Rekem village on the Cambodian side, where many had relied heavily on tourism to Preah Vihear, the situation has grown even bleaker. Since July, the number of visitors has dropped sharply due to fears of renewed conflict. Some families have begun relocating deeper inland, carrying with them a growing suspicion. The other side doesn't want us to live in peace. On the ground, the dusty red dirt roads winding along Preah Vihear slopes have grown eerily empty. But in the minds of the people, the sense of threat, born not just from weapons, but from eroded trust, is becoming increasingly palpable. ASEAN and the international community, silent hands reaching out. Amid mounting tensions, ASEAN stepped into its familiar role as mediator, convening an informal emergency meeting in Bangkok at the end of July. Though no joint statement was issued, insiders revealed that a border peace monitoring mechanism is under consideration, involving rotating oversight by Indonesia, Vietnam, and Laos, three countries seen as maintaining neutral ground. From the United Nations, while deep intervention has yet to materialize, the World Heritage Committee sent letters to both nations urging them to safeguard the cultural and architectural integrity of Preah Vihear. The message was clear: a shared heritage of humanity must not become a battleground for political sovereignty. Yet these gestures, however sincere, seem to echo faintly against the ancient stones of the mountain. For the line drawn beneath Preah Vihear, inked by colonial hands more than a century ago, is once again being redrawn. Not with pens, but with national pride, historical memory, and at times with the quiet fear that if one stays silent, one will lose the land. The borders still breathe. As the sun sets behind the summit of Preah Vihear, the shadows of ancient stone walls glow golden in the twilight, breathtaking in their beauty, yet silently bearing witness to generations shaped by suspicion and dispute. Borders, marked by ink lines and barbed wire, still fail to define the hearts of those who live on either side. ASEAN may issue statements. The United Nations may call for emergency meetings. But in the dry forests and on the weathered stone terraces of the sacred temple, soldiers still keep their fingers near the trigger. Civilians still burn incense with memories that do not align. And that is the tragedy, but also the opportunity. For in a world where colonial wounds remain unstitched, Preah Vihear is more than a matter of Thailand or Cambodia. It is a mirror reflecting the many post-colonial conflicts where history, honor, and identity intertwine like roots buried deep in stone. The question is no longer who is right or wrong. The question is, can we, after centuries of division, learn to redraw maps, not only with ink, but with trust? Let us hope that one day from that very sacred mountain, Khmer and Thai alike will look down, not through the barrel of a gun, but through the eyes of those who understand that painful histories can be the beginning of a shared future.
Thank you all for following and listening. If you enjoyed and found it interesting, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell to stay tuned for our upcoming videos.